The helicopter's blades spun wildly, kicking up dust across the hangar floor. A crowd of executives laughed as a woman in a crisp white suit crossed her arms. "Tell you what," she smirked. "Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you." The man standing beside the machine, oil-stained hands, calm blue eyes, just smiled. He didn't say a word. They thought he was just a mechanic. They didn't know he once taught pilots how to fly. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Wind roared off the rotors, rattling the aluminum coffee caddies and scattering napkins across the hangar floor. Phones were already up, executives craning for a better angle, hoping to capture a viral clip of a grease-stained nobody failing spectacularly. The woman in white, Avery Stone, 34, CEO of Stone Aerotech, tilted her chin. "Clock's ticking, mechanic." Luke Carter didn't look at her. He looked at the helicopter. The machine was a sleek gray Bell, still warm from a previous test run. The paint gleamed. The smell of Jet A hung metallic in the air. Luke stepped closer, fingertips grazing the cowling like he was reading a pulse. "Pre-flight first," he said, voice even. "Pre-flight?" One VP snorted. "It's already been flown today. Then it's definitely due." Luke crouched, checked the skid bolts, then wiped a thumb across the aft fuselage seam and held it up to the light. A smear of pinkish fluid glistened on his skin. The laughter thinned. Luke stood, walked to the ground power unit, and unplugged it with a practiced tug. "Hydraulic fluid, starboard side," he said. "Minor leak, maybe a loose fitting. We fix it before anyone flies, including me." Avery's mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "So you do know what you're looking at?" Luke didn't answer. He grabbed a rag from his back pocket and flagged down a nervous intern hovering by the tool cart. "Can you pass me the 7/16 line wrench, the one with tape on the handle?" Yes, sir." The kid, Eli, early 20s, freckles, hands shaking, fumbled the drawer open and handed it over. "Thanks." Luke offered him a quick, quiet grin. "You're fine. Breathe." The kindness landed visibly. Eli's shoulders dropped a notch. Avery watched, arms still folded. "You're very thorough for a man I found under my helicopter 15 minutes ago." "I was under your helicopter because your night crew asked for help," Luke said, tightening the fitting with 2 gentle clicks. "They're behind schedule, short 2 mechanics. I'm on contract for overflow work, Ms. Stone, not for theatrics." A ripple of amusement moved through the executives. Avery's brow lifted. "And yet here we are." Luke wiped the fitting clean, set the wrench down, and looked up at her at last. His eyes were steady, a blue that didn't flinch. "Here we are." A small voice piped from the hangar door. "Daddy?" Every head turned. A 7-year-old girl in a yellow backpack stood by the threshold, holding a paper bag and a construction paper airplane. Her hair was in 2 lopsided ponytails. The security guard had clearly tried to keep her out, but she'd come anyway, brave and serious. Luke's face changed, softened like morning light. "Hey, Peanut," he said, warmth folding into the edges of the words. "You made it." Mia bounced on her toes. "I brought you dinner." "I didn't eat the cookies. I only smelled them." Laughter, gentler this time, rolled across the floor. Avery's gaze flicked from father to daughter, something unreadable catching in her expression. Luke took the paper bag, kissed Mia's hairline, and tugged the backpack strap back over her shoulder. "Thank you. You sit with Mr. Joe over there, okay?" He gestured to the 60-something janitor leaning on his mop. The man nodded with a grandfatherly wink. "I'll watch her," Joe said. Go be a hero or whatever they're daring you into. No heroes, Luke said. Just good checklists. He turned back to the bell, set Mia's bag on a rolling stool, and climbed up the skid to peek into the transmission bay. When he hopped down, he rolled the stool toward a shivering catering assistant who'd been holding a tray too long near the draft. Trade you, he said, slipping off his faded bomber jacket and draping it over her shoulders. You look cold. Her eyes watered. I'm okay, sir, really. Humor me, Luke said with a half smile, and was already moving back to the helicopter before she could refuse. Avery's voice slid in, silk over steel. You fix leaks. You hand out jackets. You make the interns breathe. But do you fly? Luke pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up so she could see the FAA certificate on the screen, the text crisp and banal against the glow. Airline transport pilot, rotorcraft helicopter, flight instructor, instrument instructor. Ratings listed like a grocery receipt. Phones angled closer. Someone whistled. Neat trick, one executive muttered, suddenly less amused. Avery's eyes barely flicked to the screen. That piece of plastic says you did it once. I want to know if you can do it now. Luke slid the phone away and nodded toward the cockpit. Your ship, your call. He climbed in, straps snaking across his shoulders with a familiar hiss. But if I'm doing this, I'm doing it my way. And what way is that? Avery said, stepping closer. Safely, purposefully, not for your camera reel. She held his gaze a beat too long, then rounded to the other side of the helicopter and swung into the left seat, like she'd done it 1,000 times. She had. That much was public. Avery Stone wasn't only a spreadsheet CEO. She'd logged hours when she was young, back when her father still ran the company. She rarely flew now, but the headset didn't look foreign in her hands. The VPs blinked at each other. This was better than they'd hoped. Luke's voice slid into professional cadence, calm as a metronome. Fuel, topped, hydraulics, secured, circuit breakers, checked, MFDs alive. He glanced over. You take radios? I've still got the muscle memory, Avery said. The admission was almost shy. Mia sat beside Joe on an upturned crate, swinging her legs, eyes wide. The engine spooled up with a clean whine. Rotors blurred, downwash flattening the laughter to silence. The whole hangar seemed to hold its breath. Stone Tower. Bell 4-2 November, ready for hover check. Southeast pad. Avery said into the mic, her voice suddenly all business. Bell 4-2 November, cleared. The tower replied. Luke eased the collective. The helicopter unglued itself from the earth with a tenderness that felt like respect. 2 feet, 3, 5. He held it there, the world narrowing to sound and feel, the way the rotor disc bit at the air. Solid, he said, half to himself. A radio crackled on the operations desk just outside the hangar. A frantic line supervisor waved both arms. Hey, anyone monitoring ops? We've got a problem at the South Access Road. Delivery van struck the gate. Driver's okay, but they're blocking the med supply courier. Insulin packs need to make a clinic drop in 14 minutes or they spoil. A dozen people started talking at once. Luke's head turned, and something in his face clicked from demonstration to decision. He looked at Avery. You wanted to know if I can fly. Let's do something useful. She blinked. This is a demo, not... Your aircraft is a tool, Luke said quietly. We can hover over the gate, drop a sling, lift the wreckage 3 feet, enough to let the courier through. No heroics, just physics in a strap. Liability, one VP yelped. Or we sit here making social media, Luke said, and 20 diabetic families lose their meds tonight. Avery's jaws set. Beneath the white suit, something old and resolute slid back into place. "Ops," she said into her headset. "Get me a rated ground guide and a certified load strap at the south gate. 2 minutes. Clear a perimeter. This is CEO authorized." "Copy, Ms. Stone." She looked at Luke. "You have the ship." Luke nodded once. "Tower, Bell 4-2 November, requesting hop to south gate for controlled lift assist, on field only." "Approved, 4-2 November. Maintain low-level pattern. Watch crosswinds." "Roger." They eased into a lazy side slip, nose ticking toward the glitter of runway lights and the red flares of hazard cones. The helicopter skimmed over parked aircraft, the city beyond the field a necklace of distant gold. Downwash lifted grit into shimmering veils. Below, security vehicles and a cluster of workers ringed a crumpled delivery van crimped against a bent gate. A white medical courier car blinked its hazard lights impotently behind it. On the ground, Joe had an arm around Mia's shoulders, murmuring something to keep her calm. The catering assistant pulled Luke's jacket tighter and watched with a hand over her mouth. "Ground guide in place," Avery reported, watching the reflective vest below. "Wind's squirrely. Hold her steady." Luke breathed in. The helicopter hovered like a hummingbird listening to its own heartbeat. He fed in micro-corrections, left pedal, touch of cyclic, more collective. One of the line techs clipped the strap to a structural brace on the van's roof. "Up 3, Avery called softly, hand hovering near the collective like a second pair of eyes. 2, hold." The van lifted an inch, a foot, tires kissing free of the gatepost. The courier car shot through the gap, horn bleeding, people cheering in a ragged chorus. Luke eased the van sideways, set it down clear. Avery exhaled a breath she'd been holding for years. Beautiful. They settled onto the tarmac to an ovation that wasn't polite. It was grateful. Luke unstrapped and stepped onto the skid before the rotors fully spun down, his hair wine-tossed, his face unreadable. He jumped lightly to the ground and went straight to the courier driver, a young woman blinking tears. "Thank you," she stammered. "I've got 9 homes to hit tonight. They're waiting. They always wait." "Then go," Luke said, and he lifted the bent section of gate with 2 other workers so she could squeak by without scraping her bumper. She rolled away, honking twice, smiling in the rear view like she'd just been given a sunrise. When he turned back, Avery was there, wind whipping a strand of hair across her cheek. Up close, the boardroom ice in her eyes had thawed to something complicated. "You didn't grandstand," she said. "I don't perform," Luke replied. "I work." A few steps away, Eli the intern bounced on the balls of his feet. "That was... you made it look like breathing." "It is," Luke said softly. "When your life depends on the basics get beautiful." Avery studied him, the oil under his nails, the steadiness, the way he put his jacket on shivering kids and took orders from no one when a decision needed making. "Where did you learn to fly like that?" Luke glanced at Mia, who was sprinting across the tarmac now, paper plane crumpled in her fist, joy written all over her face. He bent to catch her mid-jump, scooped her up, and for a second the world shrank to a father and a daughter and the smell of Jet A. "Lots of places," he said, setting Mia down gently. "The desert, the mountains. Places people don't go unless something's gone wrong." Avery's gaze darted to the helicopter and back. "Military?" Luke's mouth twitched, neither confirming nor denying. "I left that life when I became a dad." Mia peered up at Avery with unabashed curiosity. "Are you the boss of the helicopters?" Avery's laugh, when it came, was softer than the crowd expected. On my best days, I try to be. Mia nodded seriously. Daddy says good bosses don't shout. Your dad's right, Avery said, surprised to hear her own voice tilt warm. Good bosses listen. A silence hummed between the adults, the kind with gravity. Somewhere inside it, the foolish dare Avery had made in front of her, people felt suddenly tinny and small. She cleared her throat. About earlier, she began, then stopped. Apologizing was not a language she'd learned in boardrooms. Luke saved her from it. Let's just call it a bad bet, he said lightly, and a good outcome. Avery's eyes flicked to the bell's instrument panel. For the first time since she'd stepped into the hangar, she wasn't thinking about optics. She was thinking about character. Luke, she said slowly, tasting his name. Tomorrow morning, I'm flying to Denver for a partner meeting. My chief pilot's out sick. Would you... Miss Stone? Eli shouted from the hangar. You need to see this. They turned. On the far wall of the hangar, a display screen had switched from the company highlight reel to a grainy photo from a decade ago. A rescue helicopter perched on a night-black ridge, rotors ghosted by snow, a crew silhouette hauling someone into the cabin. Under it, a plaque. Silver Star. Carter, Luke A. Mountain Rescue. 5 civilian lives saved. The room went still. Avery's eyes moved from the plaque to the man standing 10 feet in front of it, the same set to his shoulders, the same unflinching gaze. The executives looked like they'd swallowed the wind. Luke felt every stare and didn't seem to mind. He slid his hands into his back pockets, unbothered. I told you, he said quietly, almost to himself. Basics. Avery blinked, and in that blink, something humbled and human rearranged her face. Mr. Carter, she said, voice low enough that only he heard, I owe you more than an apology, and maybe a different kind of dare. Luke half smiled. Save it for part 2. He turned to Mia. Come on, Peanut. Let's take Joe home before he misses the last bus. As they walked, Luke paused to thank the ground guide by name, to fist bump Eli, to return the borrowed tray to the catering assistant who still wore his jacket. He didn't pose for a single photo. He didn't look back at the plaque. He carried the quiet the way some men carry rank. Avery watched them go, the echo of rotor wash still buzzing under her skin, a single thought louder than the rest. The mechanic didn't need her approval. He didn't need her company. He didn't need her dare. But maybe, just maybe, she needed him. She glanced at the helicopter, at the gate, at the place where a decision had turned a stunt into a small mercy that would ripple across a city tonight. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a message to her assistant. Find out everything about Luke Carter. Not the internet stuff, the real stuff. Start with people he's helped. Her thumb hovered. She added one more line. And send a driver to make sure a janitor named Joe gets home safe. The send button lit up blue under her finger, but Avery didn't press it right away. She stood, letting the chill bite her face, listening to the hangar settle, like a heart returning to rhythm after a scare. Tomorrow would come fast. With it, harder questions and harder truths. But for tonight, the insulin would arrive. A child would sleep without fear. A mechanic's daughter would eat cookies and laugh at a kitchen table that had seen too much silence. And a CEO who mocked to hide the ache of never being enough would stare at a plaque and realize leadership wasn't about owning the room. It was about earning it. Morning sunlight slanted across the hangar glass, scattering gold through the dust. Avery hadn't slept much. She kept replaying the scene, the steady way Luke held that helicopter, the calm under chaos, the small human grace that didn't need an audience. She'd built her empire on speed and control, He'd won people over by simply being. When she arrived at the airfield the next day, Luke was already there, sleeves rolled, fixing a tail rotor assembly. Mia sat cross-legged nearby, drawing helicopters with crayons on a clipboard. The picture said, "Daddy's ship." Avery crouched down beside the little girl. "That's a beautiful drawing." "Thanks," Mia said, her voice shy but proud. "Daddy says machines talk if you listen." Avery smiled faintly. "He's right." She glanced at Luke. "He always is." Luke looked up, wiping grease from his hands. "Morning, Miss Stone." "I was hoping you'd call me Avery after yesterday," she said lightly. He shrugged. "Old habits. Respect's one of them." There was something disarming about that. Simple, not performative. "Well, Luke," she said, "I read your file last night. You're not just a mechanic. You designed half the flight safety modules the Air Force still uses. You taught rescue pilots." "Used to," Luke said quietly. "Until the crash." Avery froze. "Crash?" He nodded once. 2 years before Mia was born. Engine failure in the Rockies. I was the only one who walked out. The others didn't. After that, I grounded myself. Didn't feel right to keep flying when I couldn't save my team. The hangar felt heavier now, like the air itself had stopped to listen. Avery's voice softened. "You saved people last night, Luke. Maybe not soldiers, but lives all the same." He smiled faintly. "Doesn't bring them back." "No," she said, eyes steady on him. "But it honors them." He studied her, like he was trying to decide whether to believe that. Then Mia tugged on his pant leg. "Daddy, are you sad?" Luke knelt beside her. "Not when you're here, Peanut." Avery's throat tightened at the tenderness in that single line. She'd spent her whole adult life chasing billion-dollar contracts. But what that man had in that moment, peace, purpose, love, money, couldn't fake it. She exhaled slowly. "Luke, I owe you an apology. Yesterday wasn't a test, it was arrogance. I mocked you because I thought control made me powerful." He looked up. "And now?" She swallowed. "Now I'm realizing kindness does." Silence stretched, a good kind. Then he nodded toward the helicopter. "You still flying to Denver?" Avery tilted her head. "Only if you're my co-pilot." He smiled, small but real. "Deal." As they lifted into the blue, Mia pressed her face to the hangar window, waving wildly. Luke steadied the cyclic. Avery read the airspeed. The helicopter hummed like a heartbeat between them. "Funny," she said over the comms, glancing his way. "Yesterday, I dared you to fly to impress me." Luke grinned, eyes on the horizon. "And today?" "Today," she said softly. "I'm just trying to keep up." They flew toward the sunrise, not as mechanic and CEO, but as two people quietly learning that sometimes respect doesn't come from rank or wealth. It comes from what you do when no one's watching. The flight to Denver was smooth. Too smooth for Avery's restless thoughts. She kept glancing sideways, studying the man at the controls. Luke's focus never wavered. His hands moved with precision, his calm radiating through every shift of wind and tilt of blade. But what struck her wasn't the skill. It was the quiet integrity behind it. When they landed on the private pad outside Stone Aerotech's Denver HQ, executives swarmed. Cameras, reporters, and board members, all waiting for the CEO who risked her life with a mechanic. Avery didn't correct them. She let Luke step out first. One of the senior partners, a smug man named Grant, snorted. "You brought the janitor for show?" Avery's head turned sharply. "That janitor just executed an aerial rescue last night that saved critical medical supplies. You should be thanking him, not talking down to him." Grant's smirk faltered. Luke gave her a small nod of appreciation. But before he could speak, a woman in uniform approached, silver wings gleaming on her chest. "Captain Carter?" she said quietly. "Didn't think I'd see you again." Avery froze. "Captain?" The officer smiled. "This man's a legend in our unit. The rescue he pulled in the Rockies saved 6 civilians and 2 of ours. We've been trying to get him back in uniform for years." The air around them changed. Every whisper, every phone camera, every mocking glance vanished. Avery's eyes widened. "You never said you were—" "Didn't seem relevant," Luke interrupted softly. "I'm a mechanic now. That's enough." But Avery saw the truth behind his calm. The humility of someone who'd carried weight heavier than engines or fame. Grant tried to laugh it off. Still, a man like that under a CEO's payroll? Quite the headline. Avery stepped forward, voice cold as steel. "Not under Grant. Beside, he'll be leading our new rescue aviation division if he accepts." Every head turned. Luke looked stunned. "You don't owe me that." "I'm not paying a debt," Avery said. "I'm investing in the kind of leadership this company actually needs." He met her gaze, and something unspoken passed between them. Mutual respect built not on status, but on proof. Then a voice chimed in from behind. "Daddy!" Mia came running, clutching a little paper helicopter she'd made on the plane. She handed it to Avery shyly. "You can keep it so you don't forget to listen to the machines." Avery crouched, eyes misting. "I won't forget," she whispered. Luke looked down at both of them, the woman who once mocked him now kneeling before his daughter, and for the first time in years, he felt something break open inside him. Not pride, not victory, just peace. Later, as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, Avery watched Luke walk across the tarmac with Mia on his shoulders. The same wind that once carried arrogance now carried gratitude. "Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you," she'd said. Now she knew she'd said it to the only man who never needed to prove he could. Because Luke Carter didn't chase power or applause, he lifted people. Quietly. And that, Avery realized, was the kind of man worth standing beside. Not just in the air, but in life.